today is something called CSV files. Now, CSV is short for comma separated volume, and as the name suggests, that means that a comma, the symbol on your keyboard, plays a significant part in how the data is stored. Now I've got Excel open, again our lessons block, and I've added a new sheet called CSV files. And you'll have access to a file called convert csv.csv, and this is a whole load of test data that I've just got hold of. Now you'll notice that the extension, so around this is our battleships and our lessons and the times table square, and you'll notice that you can see .xlsx, and that's an Excel document. So that's an Excel document, spreadsheet, XLS, and the X is just an extension given because there used to be a file called .xls, and when Microsoft went to a new file type, an extended one, they put the X for extended. So XLS means Excel spreadsheet, and the final X just means expanded or extended. Anyway, you'll notice also that the convert csv.csv has a different part here. Now this part here is called the extension. If you can't see it, that's because you've got them hidden, and they are commonly hidden. Windows usually hides those, as does the Mac. To see those, we simply go to View, and you'll notice that I've got a tick under File Name Extension. So if you're seeing that and you're going, well, I haven't got an extension, then what you can do is you can extend this part here, and you'll see it says comma separated values, used to be volume, values, file, and that's telling you what this file type is, Excel worksheet. But to see the extension, you simply go to View, put a tick in File Name Extension, and as if by magic, they've appeared. So here's that name again, comma separated values. And with this file type, you'll notice that I've got a green icon, and it's obviously the Excel icon. It's slightly different from the one used for the XLSX documents, but it's a very similar one. It's got the X for that. So what Windows is doing, and what the Mac does, and what Linux will do, is they'll look at this file extension and identify what program you've got connected to that. What program relates to that file extension, and that's what this thing is called at the end, a file extension. It tells the computer all about the file. The first part is the name of the file. Now that's got to be unique, but that now can be very, very meaningful to us as human beings. Computers can use those file names obviously to know which file you want to open, but the extension tells the computer a lot about the file, and in this case it tells the computer which file to open. Now let's explore this a little bit further. If I click on the Start button and I can click on the cog and go to Settings, then in Windows I can actually go to here and just type in File Extension, and you'll see we've got two options. It's the top one I want to have a look at, so we'll have a look at this one. This isn't just for Excel, this allows us to cover all kind of different file types, and it's really useful to see what the file types are associated with which programs. So what we can see here is that we've now got the file extensions set up, and what we can see is if it's a .386, then I can choose what it is. This is called virtual device driver, and if I scroll down I can see all these file extensions. It's always a dot followed by some letters. Some of the common ones obviously are Excel, so let's just go down to the E's, and EPUB, by the way, ePublisher, electronic publisher, but if we keep going down we should see, oh sorry, it's XLS. So let's scroll right down to the bottom because it's going to be right down there. So XLS, Microsoft Excel, and you can see all the file types that are associated with Excel. So all of these file extensions. If I've got an XLS HTML extension, it's associated with Excel, and that happens all the way through. WMD, Windows Media Player download package, goes with Windows Media Player, and so on and so forth. So the file extension tells the computer which program to open when you double click on it. So that's really useful. Now your icons might be different. Because I work with Excel quite a lot, I've already associated the .csv with Excel. And Excel usually, when you install it, identifies itself as an opener for CSVs, but not always the time, not always the case. Now you might have another icon there. It might be with Notepad, and I'm going to force this to open itself in Notepad. So though it defaults to seeing this in Excel, I want to first of all see this in another program. So what I'm going to do is, rather than double click on it, I'm going to right click, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the open with, which is just here, and you'll notice that the one at the top is the default program, Excel, and then I've got two other programs I could open it with. I could always go down to here and choose another one if I've got a program on my computer that is even better than those, or I can go and search for one. But I want to just look at this and see it in its raw type, and what I mean is nothing else around it. WordPad is lovely, but it's a cut down version of Microsoft Word, and it adds a whole load of other things. I just want to look at the raw text that's in that file. And if you ever want to look at a file and just see what's in there with nothing else added, no risk of anything else added, Notepad is a beautiful tool to use. So I'm going to choose Notepad. Now, that's the file there. And if you notice, what I've got is at the top, I've got what appears to be names of whatever the data is, SEQ sequence 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. Name stroke first, name stroke last, street, age, city. They seem to describe the data, and then what I've got beneath it is line after line after line of data. There are 100 entries in here. Now this is just randomized data. There's very, very effective websites out there that will generate data for you, and that's all I've done here, is just generated the data. But you've got access to this particular file. So you'll notice that between the data sets is a comma, and that comma is separating the data. That means that I can tell the computer, I know that this data is to do with this one here, because that's the first heading and that's the first piece of data. I can tell that this here must be a first name, not because I recognize the name, but because it's the second piece of data and there's a comma after it. So the data is separated by commas, or the commas separate the values. So comma separated values, and that's all it is. It's just a text file with all the data separated by commas. So if you've got a CSV file, usually they're separated by commas. Let's have a look at that a little bit further. Now I'm not going to double click on this. What I'm instead going to do is I'm going to go to data, get data, and I've got a number of options here, but the one we clearly want is from file. And you'll notice I've got a number of choices. From an existing workbook, that's from another Excel document. Now this is importing. You'll notice the word import. This is different to open. We're not going to open another workbook. We're not going to open a workbook at all. But in this case, you wouldn't be opening the workbook. You're going to take data from that workbook. Importing is taking another file and pulling the data from that file into this file. Usually import means from a different file type. But in this case, Excel, Microsoft often play loose with these terms, import and save, and we'll look at that a little bit later on. So we could go from the import, go from the workbook. Second one down is clearly the one we want because I've got that CSV, and you can see comma separated value. XML is something else, JSON, PDF. You've probably seen the word PDF before, but we can pull data from PDFs, from an entire folder of data, or from a SharePoint folder. That's on the internet, that's beyond where we're going, but these are really useful. But we're going to go to this one here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that. Now I've got to go to my Excel lessons folder, and you'll see I've got 2 CSVs, and you will do shortly have 2 CSVs. Don't worry about this grade list.csv, you'll have that soon, but we're going to use this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on there. Now I have 2 choices here, and this is true with all these open windows and the save windows in many ways. Is I could simply click on it and click import, or I could simply double click on it. Both will give me the same action, and you'll get used to it. After a while it's quicker obviously for me to click on the name and in fact double click and it will open for me. But I just want to look at this file extension here, and you can see it's looking for 3 different file types. It will accept them. That's why I can't see the Excel documents. Let's just see what that means. If I look in the actual Excel lessons, I've got all 5 files here, including ones that have .xlsx, but this doesn't allow us to see those. And this is called a filter. This is filtering them to show us only the files we're interested in. And as you just saw, if I click on that, I could choose all files, and there they are. But I don't want to. I want to keep that. I can click on the file and click import. I have some tools here, but we won't worry about those. That's just mapping a network drive, but we don't need to do that. That's not for this course. But I've got the import here. So I could double click or click import, but since my mouse is now over import, I'm going to single click on import. Now your screen might look slightly different to this, but it's virtually the same thing. The wizard opens up and it's saying what's separating your data. In this case I've got a comma separating my data, but it's not the only thing that could. Sometimes you'll get a CSV, and just like everything in computing, not everything sticks to the rules. So it might be fixed width, it might be comma custom, and they might have chosen their own character. And the reason for choosing something different, for example space or a tab key, that's the key, left hand side of your keyboard, 2 arrows pointing different directions towards a brick wall. Semicolon, the equal sign, and the reason for choosing something different from a comma is, what if your data has a comma in it? What if you've used a comma in the address and you want the address to still have the comma in it? So you might choose a symbol that isn't in your data, but the file type will keep the name CSV most commonly. So we're going to keep it as comma. We've got the language here in case the language is different, but your system should pick up on which language. But in case you picked up a file, for example, if you're working on my file but you are in any other location, you might want to set this to Western European, because then the system will know how to read it properly. And Excel asks us if we want to recognize the entire, how the data is set up, the type of data that's set up, based upon the entire data set, the first 200 rows, or don't bother, we'll tell it the data types, but I'm going to keep with that. It's identified the first row as a header row, and it's therefore said, oh, the header row, these are the headers, and so it's separated the data. Again, because we've said comma, it's given us that data. If I do change this, you'll see the data just looks as it does in the file, but if I change that back to comma, it's perfectly fine. I've got transform data, which we won't worry about, and I've got load. I've got to click down load to so I can direct it, but I'm quite happy to load it. I've got this selected at A1. If I wanted to, I could click on load to, and then it will ask me which system I want to load it to. I don't want to do that, but I can tell it to do it to the existing worksheet at that location. So if I wasn't clicked on that cell there and I was worried it was going to put it in the wrong place, load to and there. Otherwise I could have just clicked on load. I'm going to click on OK, and Excel then goes off, collects the data, and gives it a very pretty little outline, which I might not have wanted, but Excel has decided that's ideal for me. I can remove that, by the way, that formatting, simply by going to the table styles, clicking down and choosing the one at the top that says none, and I'd prefer that. You will also notice that we've got drop downs here, and that's Excel trying to be clever, and what we're going to do there is simply go to Home, Sort and Filter, and take this tick off of Filter. I'm going to look at that later on, but not right now. So that's how we can import the data, and we've got it there as raw data. And that's how to import a CSV. In the next lesson, we're just going to look about how to export a CSV, which should be relatively quick and easy. See you in the next video. So we've got our data from the last lesson on getting CSV files, and in this case we're going to look at exporting data. Now, as I say, you need to be aware that when you click on File, you've actually got three options. If you've never saved this file before, and we clearly have, we've saved this as lesson, then Save and Save As take you to the same location. But let's say we have saved it, then we have three options available to us. Save what we've done to the file we've already created. Save As, save what we've done to a new file, or if you've made a mistake, to the same file, just overwrite what you've got. The next one is to export the file. Now, the difference usually between these is Save and Save As saves it in the file format that the program understands, a .xlsx file in this type. Export is to send the data out in a different format. So let's just click on Export for the time being. I'm given a number of options. I can create a PDF, or what's known as an XPS document. We rarely now seem to work with XPS. Most commonly it's a PDF format. And then we can change the file type. Now, if I click on that, I'm given again choices. And there again, we've got the .xlsx file type. Now, that's the current model. As I said before, Excel stands for Excel. The S is spreadsheet, and the X is for extended or expanded. The other option is .xls. This is the older version, and you can see it's saying 97 to 2003 versions of Excel. In fact, .xls existed before then, but you can't always open an XLS file in versions before 97 because the format has changed, even in those situations. Open Document Spreadsheet, ODS, is a format that is able to be opened in other spreadsheet packages relatively easily. Now, other spreadsheet packages out there will also open XLSX documents and .xls documents, but they're not always as good at it. ODS is a standard, so when you choose that option, the other programs can open it because Excel has saved it in a format and in a way that is easily readable by the others. Now, we've got this one, which is a template. XL, again, for Excel. T instead of S, so T for template, and it's the extended version. So this allows us to create a template that is similar to here, but has other benefits around it. If we're recording macros, then you can't save it in this format, or you can, but you'll lose all the macros you've created. That's because macros can potentially store viruses. You can write viruses in Excel, so when you open them, they affect your machine. So you don't select this version, XLS, so Excel, spreadsheet, macro version. You don't use that form unless you've got macros and you know that the people who are going to open those files know you and trust your macros. And then we've got a binary system, which is a much faster loading and saving format, and that reduces a lot of clutter that exists in all these other formats. Now, it's unusual to have the export offer you the option to save your file or export your file in the current program's types. The point of the export option is to take data out of your existing program and convert it to another format. So the ODS would be correct for an export because it's not the default, it's not the version, the format for Excel. It's not its standard format. You can open ODS, but again, that's not an open, and that's the opposite to export, which is import. we have here examples of true export. That's .txt files, .csv files. We've got delimited, space delimited PRN files, and we can even choose other types, rarer types, or even come up with our own versions if we really wanted to. Now, I want to export this as CSV, but before we do, let's look at how Excel messes this boundary between export and save a little bit further. Let's look at the save as. So I've got here, and I'm going to click on this down arrow. Now, Excel actually only works with these 4 at the top. They're the default formats. And in fact, for modern Excel, that top one is the default format for Excel. So that's what it should save as. Almost all the others, and we can excuse the next 3. So the first 4 we can ignore, but all the others aren't default formats for Excel. Excel can't work with those files directly. You have to pull them in, and then they work in the format of XLSX. You'll notice, by the way, here, and that would be a true export, because the format, this is the one that predates 97. Notice there's no 96 because there was no Microsoft Excel 96, but these go right back to the early versions of Excel. Same file format as the 97 to 2003, but again, Excel doesn't work with that format at all. It's a very old format. So we've got a mixture in here that we've got all the way down here, and Excel, these are actually exports, but we're on the save as option. And that's the thing with Excel is a little bit confused over export and save as. So in the strictest term, export should be where you're going to send data out in a format that your program does not usually work with. So if you're working with an image piece of software like Photoshop, then an export would be as a PNG or JPG or any other such format. But its save should save it as the file format recognized by Photoshop. And we can live with that. We can accept that. So when we come to export data, we can export data either through the save as or the export, not because that's standard, but because this is Excel. If we choose CSV, and then we click save as, and you'll notice save as button, same as the save as button there. So gets that confusion a bit further. Click save as, and the system will go into its standard mode. Then all we've got to do, I'm going to call this lessons.csv. Because a CSV is a flat file, that means there's no such thing as worksheets, there's no such thing as layers or 3D or anything else. Excel will only save the current sheet as CSV. And that's really important, by the way. But we'll have a look at that when we come to the next lesson. So lessons.csv, we're going to save it as that, and I'm just going to click save. Now, here's the warning. It's going to tell us that it saves only the active sheet. To save all sheets, we must save it as a file type that supports multiple sheets. Let's click OK because it's a CSV we want, and that's it. I'm going to go to the folder that holds that. I'm going to look for the lessons.csv. I'm going to right click on the file, and I'm going to choose Open with Notepad. And I can see that the data that was in the other lesson is now in this format. So that's quite useful. Okay. And that's exporting data. In the next lesson, we're going to just have a look at some of the problems with working directly with CSV files. So just double clicking and opening them. Quite quick, but very important. See you in the next video. As I showed in the last video, if you try to save as a CSV file, you will get a warning. That's because Excel, as I keep saying, is not designed to work directly with CSV files. And that's one of the common issues with CSV files people forget. So if I go to CSV and I double click on there, so there's my convert CSV, it automatically will open up in a spreadsheet. So you can see it's opened it up, and Excel's recognized it in this way. Now, I don't want to alter this one, so I'm going to close that one down. And luckily, earlier, we actually created a lessons.csv. So what I'm going to do again, just to show you how I did it, rather than open this up or import this into Excel, I'm going to double click on it. And that's going to, because I've got this icon, if you haven't got this icon, it won't work. If you haven't got the Excel icon, simply right click and go to open with. Excel should be in this list. If it's not in this list, choose another app, and then you need to go and look for more apps. And again, Excel should be in that list if it's available. If you've got it installed, it will appear in that list. You can even force it to always. So if my default was Notepad, for example, or I wanted that to be the default program, then I'd simply click in there and it will open it in Notepad and always open it in Notepad. Let's just show you that very quickly. Click in there, click OK, and now you can see it's opened it in Notepad, but these have turned to Notepad symbols. So if I right click again and go to open with, if I wanted to be the default program, then there's no way I click on those. What I do instead is choose another program or another app, click on the program I want it to be, choose always use this app to open .csv files, click OK. Not only will it open up in Excel, it's complaining because I've got a file already called lessons. Not only will it do so, but it will recolor these or reassign the new icon. What I'm going to do momentarily to stop that problem is I'm going to close this one down, and this is called lessons.csv. I don't want to save it as such, so I'm going to actually cancel that, and just so I don't cause any problems. Now, let me try and explain the problem, because obviously I'm clicking through and doing something without explaining to you, and then that's not fair. Earlier, we opened up we saved, exported this data as lessons.csv. Now, what I didn't highlight to you at the time, and here's where problems start to develop, it's renamed the sheet lessons because that's what I saved it as a CSV. So it renamed the sheet. Even though I called this CSV files, it's actually renamed it. Not only that, but it's renamed the entire sheet lessons.csv. Now I can click on the down arrow and see that information there. But if I save this, it will now save it to the lessons.csv, and all the problems I'm going to show to you will arise. And that will basically mean I will lose everything along here. Everything we've done, I would lose. Now they'd still exist in the original file that I used, but I'd lose them in this file. And let's explain that in a clearer detail in a moment. So because this is lessons.csv, and because I'm going to use this file repeatedly, I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Save As, and I'm going to choose, go up to here, change this to the top one, Excel Workbook XLS. Now it's already been called Lessons. There it is. You can see the time and date I last saved it. I'm going to click Save. It says, do I want to replace the existing file? That's because now I've done a Save As, and it's now saying, right, you want to say this is a new file, but actually this file already exists, and it does because that's what we've been working with. But because I know, and I've got to stop, and I've got to read that, and I've got to think about it. Too many people just get these messages, go, oh yeah, okay, and then find they've got a problem. So let's just stop and think about this. The file already exists, but the file that exists is the same one I've got, but the one I've got open is a new updated version. So it's the same file, but updated. So I'm perfectly happy to click on OK. But if I've done something major, I might want to give it a new file name. So I'm going to click on OK. This now says lessons.xlsx, so that's safe. So I can now go back down to here. There's the lessons CSV that we had last time. I'm going to double click on there. Excel takes a little while and then opens this up. Now you can see the hash marks to signify that the cell isn't big enough to display the data. We all know that I can now widen that and it will appear. We're not going to format this. You can see where it crops and everything else. What the problem here is that Excel offers me everything we're used to in Excel. So I can add a new worksheet or another new worksheet. Now let's suggest that I now decide to save this. So I'm on sheet 2. There's nothing on sheet 2. I go to File. I go to Export or Save As. Change the file type. CSV. Save As. I'm going to save it as the lessons. That's perfectly fine. And I'm going to click Save. Or because this is lessons.csv and I'm just going to save the file, I just go straight to Save. This is a quick way of doing what I've just done. So I click Save. So that seems to have worked. But let's now close this file down. Let's not save it because we've just saved it. It says saved, so I don't need to save it. So, well, let's hit save again. Okay, it's gone. Lovely. So now let's open this in Notepad. So open with Notepad. All the data we had there has gone because we saved sheet 2 as lessons.csv. All the data I had is gone and I can't get it back. So that's a really serious issue. Not with Excel, nothing wrong with Excel, except for the fact that, again, if I open up this file here, I'm not going to do it with this one because I want to keep this data. But if I did create a new sheet, go File, Save, and then go yes, yes, and close it down, I'd lose all this data. Now imagine that that's all your work data. You've spent hours, maybe days collecting data, and you do, oh yeah, okay, new sheet, even type some formula in, do some calculations, then say, oh, I need to save this, file, save. It comes up with an error. You go, yeah, okay, save. You come to close it down and says, do you want to save? And you go, oh, but I have saved. Yes, save it. Click on it. The sheet closes. You've now lost all that data. So do be careful. When you open CSVs, try not to double click on them, because though Excel, Excel is the icon, though Excel will very happily open them, it will cause you problems because you will forget what you're working on. If you want to work with Excel spreadsheets, if you want to work with data that's in CSVs, then my advice is go to the data, get data from file, from text file, and use the wizard that comes with it. Everything we looked at in that import, let's do with that. Now the wizard we've got here is a new one, because I'm using the latest version of Microsoft Office 365. And if you've got a contract, if you're paying a monthly subscription, it will constantly update to the new wizard. But if you've got an older version of Excel, or if you've got a single installation of it, or if you're at work and therefore they don't automatically roll out the updates, then your wizard may have looked very, very different to this. And you might have been in that previous video looking at video 38 and going, but that's not how mine looks. So we're now going to look at what's called the legacy wizard, the previous way of importing data. And we're going to do that in the next video. So see you then. So we've been looking at importing and exporting CSV files, and if you remember the file that we imported here, I then saved as lessons.csv and it renamed the sheet to lessons. So in amongst the two videos I've gone back and renamed this as importing CSVs just so I've got that connection to the previous videos. I've then created a new tab called Legacy Import Wizard, and this is because when I went to get from text CSV and then double clicked on the file, I was presented with the new wizard that appears. A wizard is nothing more. It's another guy with a pointy hat pointing a wand at you. A wizard is a small program that guides you through the steps of something. So anything that gives you step by step on how to do something is termed a wizard in computing. So this is the modern wizard, but you may have seen something very, very different. So I wanted to go through that in case you've now got here, you traveled all the way to video 38 with no issues really. Yeah, solved a few problems, got there, and then suddenly this completely new interface and you're sitting there saying, I'm stuck. So hopefully you saw that this said the word legacy. Anything that is historic, that is not current, is termed legacy. So again, to do that, and if you've got Excel as I do with the latest one, you might want to just see how this works anyway. So I thought I'd show you how I activate that wizard. So you simply go to File, you go down to the bottom to Options, you click on Options, and then you look for Data. Click on Data, and at the bottom of Data are all of the legacy wizards to do with importation. So I'm going to click on the text one because that's the one I'm interested in. Now, if you're using the old wizard, of course, you don't need to go here because you've already got the legacy wizard. And it's not in your program, it's not called legacy. It's the current version of the wizard. It just happens to be that if you're using the same version as I am and you've got the modern one and you want to just see the legacy one, or if you're one of those people who prefer the legacy interface, then it's available to you there. So I've done that, ticked that, I'm going to click OK. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to where we were before, get data. I've got the from file, but if I just stop for a moment, I can see I've got the new option here, the legacy wizards, and I've got from text legacy. So this is not there normally, but because I put that tick in, now it is. So I'm now going to click on that, and the same interface seems to occur. I've got the open, it's called the import, but it's the open window that we've seen whenever you come to open a file. Again, it's still filtered. There's nothing different between this open or import window and the previous one. So I'm just going to go to convert, and as I say, I can double click or click on import. The first time I clicked on import, so I'm just going to prove to you by double clicking on there that it opens the wizard. And here's the traditional wizard. Now there might be some of you sitting there and just going, that's the one I have, or some of you sitting there going, oh my god, this is weird. So what you've got here is there's 3 steps to this, and it's relatively simple. Where do we start importing from? Well, we start importing from row 1. That's this row here, the file origin, and this is where we again have the file format. So I've got mine PC8 MS-DOS. That's perfectly fine. This version, this wizard, does not default to recognizing the top headers. If you remember when I imported, it automatically recognizes top row as containing data that describes all the following data. To do that in this version, I have to tick there. That now tells it that this top row is full of headers. It tells us about the data below. Now, quite often you'll find that you've got fixed length is ticked. These ones are important. If you are going to use a CSV, comma separated, it is the delimited one you want to have selected. These are called radio buttons, and radio buttons means that you can have one or the other but not both active. So delimited, characters such as commas, that's the one we want, or tabs, separates, so anything that separates them except for spaces, we use the delimited. At the moment this doesn't look different, we're just going to click next. Now here's the option about what we've got is ticked to tab. I've never understood why Excel defaults to tab, but it does. It doesn't matter. These are selection boxes and I can tick as many of these as I like. So I'm going to tick comma and I'm not going to untick tab because it doesn't affect it. But if you've got any doubt at all, remove the tick you're not interested in and just keep the one you've got. But as I say, it doesn't bother me because there's no tabs in this file. As soon as I do that, I get an image that shows me the separation of data, and I can check that if I want to simply by scrolling up and down. I could choose a different one, but I'm not going to. There's other and things like that. So I'm just going to click next. This is where the data type comes in, and if you wanted to, you could click through these and select the data type, but actually you're only offered a very, very small selection. You could click advanced, but it's probably better. I've never known an instance where it's not better to simply finish the wizard, step 3 of 3 anyway, and then sort out data inside the spreadsheet. So I'm going to click finish. It's going to then ask me, and do you remember in the other one, this one was a little bit more hidden, but in this one it's straightforward. Where do I want to import to? And it's gone to where I was clicked. And that's really useful. If it's not in the right place, simply click on this button here, and now you can click anywhere you like. But I'm very happy with that. Once you've done that, click the replacement button here. We go back, and I'm going to click OK. And there it is. There's the header row, and there's all the data below. So that works really, really nicely. I've got the data in my spreadsheet, and I've imported it using the legacy wizard. Now, because I don't use the legacy wizard, I'm not going to use it in here. The new one is very useful for me. It's very powerful, much more powerful than the legacy one. Then I'm not going to be interested in using this legacy one. So I'm going to go back to File, back to Options, back to Data, take the tick out, click OK, and now I'm OK. You might have noticed, by the way, it was grayed out. That's because I was selected onto the data that is just imported. So it's recognizing I couldn't have used it anywhere at that stage, but I can always use it over and over again. So that's importing through the legacy wizard. And for those people who have got, if you've got the legacy wizard on your machine, now you don't feel so worried that we are poles apart in how to do this importing. So we've looked at CSVs. We understand CSVs are comma separated volumes. We understand we can import data. We know that we can export data, and that all programs, or I've never come across a program that hasn't got an export option. And if it's dealing with data, one of those export options will be CSVs. CSV files are very old. They go way back into the early days of computing. So they're very, very well understood. And most programs that deal with data will allow you to export the data as comma separated volume or comma separated values, CSV file. So be used to that. If you've got a program, Microsoft Access or any other spreadsheet or any other database or some websites, then feel free to choose the CSV file, knowing in the comfort of your own world that you can import a CSV without any issues at all. In our next video, we're now going to look at a new function called the average function. I'm going to see how we can use that and what information it helps us with. So, see you in that next video.